Hi, welcome to our third installation of Sipurei Reshit, presented by the Orange County Board of Rabbis. My name is Rabbi David Young, and I am thrilled to be here with my two amazing colleagues. I will let them introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Rabbi Cohen.
Thank you, David. Awesome. Rabbi Young, sorry. So, the colleagues thing, right? Thank you, Rabbi Young. So I am Rabbi Heidi Cohen, and I am with Hanefesh Jew by You. It is so great to be with you and with everyone. And I am honored to introduce my colleague, Rabbi Marcia Tilchin.
Thank you. Thank you, Heidi and David. I'm Marcia Tilchin, and I am the founder and spiritual leader of the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County, which is sort of a Jewish engagement portal in a variety of ways for the broader community. And it's really an honor to be with both of you. Thank you.
So good to be here. And we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, but I want to set the stage a little bit because Parashat Lecha, which spans 5 chapters of Genesis, has so much in it. There's the hero's journey where Abram sets out to who knows where, and there's the action adventure movie where he battles the kings, and there's the pregnancy trial where there's almost a Bechdel test that ends up failing when 2 women actually have interaction with each other in the Torah, and there's so much, the choosing of the land between Lot and Abram, and then finally the changing of the name and the circumcision. There's just a ton to talk about. Mm-hmm. And Rabbi Tilchin, you had an idea where you had brought about the stepping back and thinking about the development from Bereshit to Noach to Lech Lecha, and I would love for you to start with that if you don't mind.
Well, thank you. I want to sort of attribute this thinking to our colleagues, Rabbi Kavod Weider and Cantor Natalie Young. I was with them last Shabbat, and part of the conversation in the Torah study was really how, from the beginning of when we meet Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, even until right now, you can sort of look at the trials and struggles of each of those characters in Torah as the developmental stages from infancy into, let's say, young adulthood. So, Adam and Eve were just so naive and needed to be fully cared for. Cain and Abel, if you look at sort of the 4-year-old, the toddler who wants what they want and doesn't really know how to control their impulses. And of course, what happens is a devastating outcome when, out in rage, Cain kills his brother, and regretfully so, of course. And then, into Noach, where there's sort of, you're in a protective way, but you're a little bit more aware. And then finally, Abraham's call to leave his house, to become the man he was supposed to be, to do the job he was supposed to do that would ultimately change the world, he had to self-actualize. And I thought that was really an interesting way to look at his journey, as you said, the hero's journey, and be able to see ourselves as Avram. We all have a hero's journey at many stages of our lives. So I thought that would be one of the things that we could talk about this morning.
I think that when you bring up the whole hero's journey, by the way, Rabbi Tilchin, is that whole idea that, first of all, you're talking to, 2 geeks, right? Rabbi Young, I mean, you and I, we love the whole Marvel universe. And so that whole hero's journey, the transformation of the individual and the discovery of the individual, looking at Abraham and even looking at Sarah, both of them go through this incredible transformation, not only of the name change that they're going to experience later on, but first of all, being called, when Avram is called out, Lech Lecha, we always translate that into go forward, right? You go forward. I want to challenge something else. Instead of it saying you go forward, go unto you. That whole idea of the transformation, go into you, not just going out into somewhere else, but looking within. And I think Avram then is going to accept this test and accept this journey with Sarai and with his family to not only go somewhere else physically, but to go somewhere else personally. And to accept it, to embrace it, and to be challenged by it on so many different levels and push back. Because I think he's also a little bit like that toddler too, kind of going, but why? But why? We're going to get a lot of whys, especially with the next parasha when with testing with his son.
I want to tap into that nerddom that you talked about a minute ago, Rabbi Cohen. The hero and the superpowers that are displayed by so many characters in the Torah is always something I kind of pay attention to, that gets my antenna up. And Abram's, I noticed this while I was preparing for this discussion, that Abram's superpowers happen differently than most of the other characters really in the entire Bible, not just the Torah. That most other characters, when they are about to do something superhuman, there's a phrase, Ruach Elohim, that happens before that, or Ruach Adonai, depending on the character, I guess depending on the author of the text. But with Abram, when he battles the kings, when he battles Hedor Laomer, one of those great names to try and say, and all the kings with him, he does it without this Ruach Elohim. He does it on his own, and so much on his own that he tells that when the other side of the battle, the kings who were fighting on Abram's side say, how can we reward you for all you've done for us? He says, I don't even want so much as a sandal strap from you, because I don't want you to say that I got my wealth through you. So this Lech Lecha, this go into yourself, it's like al chad kama v'chama, like all the more so for Abram, who does it really on his own, and not until the end does he get that divinity pressed into his name.
Yeah.
If I can just say, it's interesting. I haven't ever really thought about Avraham as a vigilante, but in a way, you're right. I mean, he is kind of Superman. I mean, just in his wealth and his power and his confidence. I don't think anybody can just Lech Lecha on their own. I mean, I do think it does take a certain level of faith and self-confidence to be able to say, I'm willing to leave the place of my comfort and nurturing and break out and not even know where I'm going. I think that that's also one of the most fascinating pieces of this. I go to the land that I will show you, but that ends up becoming a number of different places. He gets shown a place, and then suddenly there's a wrench thrown in, and there's a famine, and he has to go somewhere else, and he sort of manages that debacle. We could talk about the ethics of how Sarai and the Pharaoh and Avram interact. And one would say, dude, he's a survivor. He did what he had to do, and she was his partner, and she agreed. But I would say so I'm not a superhero thing, but to understand all the biblical characters as superheroes, he really is one. I mean, you've just opened my eyes to that. So kol hakavod.
Well, and that whole idea too, that his taking on that challenge and then finding that blessing as well. And yes, we even get that foreshadowing that happens throughout the parasha, right? Where you're going to go down to this place, and oh, by the way, your future generations are going to go there as well. Yeah. They're going to be enslaved for 400 years, and I, God, will take them out with a strong hand, mighty arm, all of those great, pieces. And so it's that telling, Avraham, the whole transformation. It's like, listen, you're not the be all and end all. You're the beginning. You're the beginning of this. And that journey that you are going to be taking. Now, we all take those journeys, right? So this whole idea of our go unto yourself, I love, traveling across the United States. And I was just recently in Washington, D.C., and I am always in awe of the history that is there. And I love to wander through the different museums, and especially the American History Museum. And that whole concept of how people traveled and how, establishing the United States and establishing the country, and the pioneers who made their way west go somewhere new. They had no idea what they were going to do, but it was like they were going to go. How many times do we blindly go? It's like we hear that calling. We're like, okay, I want to go. How many times do we do that?
Heidi, also, I love the fact that you brought up the fact that there is the foreshadowing of the future of the Israelite people right here in this Parsha. When we just met the individual, first of all, we know that every great movement can start with one. That's a huge lesson that we can get from this. But also, very often I don't think we allow ourselves to understand that the actions we take today, for good and for bad, hopefully more for good, really do have a redounding impact for hundreds of years to come in ways that we don't get what Abraham did. We won't know what's going to happen, but to know that is absolutely the truth, and how each of us could trace back in our own histories a decision that was made by ancestors in whatever, so that we'd be sitting here right now as the Orange County Board of Rabbis having this conversation. It's profound, beautiful.
There's so much to this, like, where to go from here. I'm still rolling on the superhero thing, and the idea of how if he's the first, then we're all superheroes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That Abraham and Sarah, right? So both of them are going to go through this transformation. So that it's the two of them coming into themselves and going, oh, here's the strength that I have, this inner strength. He laughs. He laughs when God says, hey, yeah, you're going to be a dad. And later on, Sarah's going to laugh. And so we get Yitzchak. But that we laugh sometimes when we get nervous and we don't know. And it's like, really? Yeah.
I was just wondering, do you think that there's also an element of the depiction of regret in this Parsha? Meaning, when they can't have a child, and Sarai makes the decision to give over her maidservant Hagar, and all that unfolds. I do think that sometimes we make decisions in our lives that, we made them, and whatever unfolds, but that we might go, was that me thinking my most clearly? And I'm wondering, do you think that plays into the relationship between, maybe not the relationship between Sarah and Hagar, but certainly Sarah's feelings about Hagar and what unfolds in next week's Parsha, which is so loaded? I'm just curious.
For sure. The scene where Hagar runs away and then has to go back.
Right.
It's so heart-wrenching. And that's what I, flippantly called the failed Bechdel test, because that, at least there's a scene with two women, even though their conflict is about a man. So that makes them fail the Bechdel test. But we get this amazing, moment of pain. And, with all three of us do work in the interfaith community. So I think it's important to recognize this as well, that, our cousin Ishmael, If he comes from Abram as well, well, guess what? He's super too.
Absolutely. Beautifully
Wow.
said. It's true.
And there's also, when God says, listen, Ishmael is also going to be blessed. I hear exactly what you're saying right there, Rabbi Tilchin, this idea of the regret that Sarai has of going ahead and saying, here, let's create this surrogacy so that this promise can be fulfilled. But there's then that reassurance from God to say, look, it's all going to turn out okay. So between the three of them, now we're creating even this more dynamic relationship that's going to be between Abraham and Hagar and Sarah, and how all three of them have to reconcile the relationship that they share, and to recognize God saying it's okay. You each have a different path, and you're each going to be blessed. And isn't that beautiful? And I think we forget that.
Yeah.
And we need to hold on to that. And we need to share that.
Absolutely. And the question of fertility issues, I mean, of the three of us, I'm probably not the one who should bring this up, but the idea of fertility issues that are so common today that we don't talk about very often, that people like to present themselves as strong, however many children you have, this is great, and you don't talk about how many other times you tried to have children, or how much help you had to get in having the children, how much money you had to spend to get the help to have children. And here we have a story that helps us be empathetic with each other, and remembering that there's so much difficulty with this. And Abram feels the pain where he says, I'm not going to have any kids. All of my stuff is going to go to Damascus Eliezer, and what's going to happen right before that. I believe Rabbi Cohen, you mentioned him laughing when God said, no, it's not so. But we feel his pain, we feel Sarah's pain. We understand this even in modern times, this idea of trying to have the perfect healthy 2.3 children and a dog and a white picket fence is not so easy.
It's still an issue today. I mean, I will say in our society, I think you're right. And it's amazing that it traces back to thousands of years ago. But when you hear that somebody has 5 kids, you go, "You have 5 kids?" And again, there's a lot of things that can be in there, like how do you afford it? Like must drive you crazy, all these things. But really, there is still a measure in a certain part of society that the more children you have, that you've succeeded at something, which is not necessarily the case in any way, shape, or form. And I think we all have to work to combat against that stigma. And Heidi and I as mothers and working mothers, I mean, like, it ain't easy. And but I want to ask you another question, because first of all, I love the fact that you've sort of taken us through the whole Parsha today. Circumcision. Let's just talk about that for a second, because that's how we end this cliffhanger of a Parsha. That God really
so many puns that could come from that sentence.
I know.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
No, but just that, what I would love to know what the two of you think. I sort of have my own ideas about this, but what does it mean to mark the body in a covenantal way? I'm just sort of interested if you have any thoughts about that. And in particular, because it's becoming an issue of controversy in modern times, even among observant Jews. And I've just, there was a time like 30 years ago, we're not talking that long ago, where even the most secular person, of course, they circumcised their son if they were Jewish. That's just what you did. And, you might have felt queasy, but you did it. And now it's a different conversation. I would love to know sort of what you've learned and how you feel about the conversations in our time.
I think there's an interesting piece with that too. When we talk about somebody who chooses to become Jewish, so a male who chooses to become Jewish,
Right.
and the concept of hatafat dam brit. Okay, so even if he is circumcised, that he goes through hatafat dam brit, which is taking a drop of blood, right? So the question is what is the covenant? Now, yes, we can go ahead and read it literally of that the circumcision, that this will be a sign on your flesh, and go that direction with it. But there are so many things within Torah and our tradition that we continue to evolve. So is it the actual circumcision, that actual having to physically take the foreskin? Is there room for hatafat dam brit, so that entering the covenant through that drop of blood? Where are the other ways of interpreting it to meet us where we are?
So, such good questions, and this is something that I'm currently struggling with, the way that I organize potential converts to Judaism, and my need to be egalitarian in my Jewish practices. How can I demand something of someone just because they have a penis versus someone who does not? So I've made it kind of a don't ask, don't tell thing, where I'll say, if you choose, here I teach the rules, and here are the rules, and you do what you decide you need to do, and you don't have to tell me either way. And for someone who does not have a penis, I say, these are the rules. And is there something that you want to do to mark this occasion in a way? And I think in today's was, if tell them I'm busy if it's for me. And I think that
Cohen, it's good.
in today's world, like, I was saying to someone the other day who was joining our synagogue, who was a little bit embarrassed that they have, sleeves of tattoos on their arm. And I said, there's no big deal. In this generation, it's more rare to not have a tattoo. And so I wonder if we're going to get into that world where maybe we can, I wouldn't want to encourage someone to get a tattoo because of all of the mishigas around that. But, I think for someone who chooses to mark their body in that way, to say, hey, I'm Jewish, as long as it's not the tetragrammaton or an idol or a memorial, because those are specifically against the rules of tattooing, I would say that could be something that we could look into and study as a community and see what we can do to honor marking our bodies.
And I want to add one piece to that, Rabbi Young. When you started there talking about each individual, because here we are in a world in which one of the important questions that we ask individuals when we meet them is, what are your pronouns? Yeah. And everybody identifies in a different way, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And so some people are they and them, he and him and his, and recognizing that our identity is not just based on what our gender is or what have you, what body parts we have, but it's also something deeper. So I like when you're talking to somebody who's going through this process and saying, let me put this whole piece out here for you, for all genders, and to say, how do we mark that entering into the covenant? Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
It's, and I just will, sort of share, first of all, I appreciate everything you're saying. And, as having grown up in the traditional Jewish world and being trained both as a cantor and a rabbi in, under the umbrella of the conservative movement, and then understanding the world that we live in now very clearly, it is that's a journey that I'm, still on. Like when we take somebody to the mikvah, when I take somebody to the Beit Din, it says, I promise to enter my children into the rite of circumcision according to the laws of Abraham. Like that's on the paper, right? So I don't want someone to sign something that isn't real.
Right.
And that is, I think, among many other conversations, I think that's going to be, listen, believe me, we should be here 100 years from now and 200 years to still be having this debate. That's really the more important thing, whatever. But these evolutionary conversations about what's appropriate, and what isn't, and of course, like, do we all, even the most frum of the frum, can't do everything that the Torah mandates because it doesn't exist anymore. It's not an option. And so, I leave that and I say that, we just need to support each other and share as we all do I think our primary goal, which was Abraham and Sarah's goal, is to create a tent of Judaism that is open on all sides for everybody to feel comfortable and to know God as, our creator and one who loves us.
Amen, amen. And speaking of God as our creator and one who loves us, talk about pronoun difficulties. It's something that before I was even aware that people struggled with pronoun difficulties, I was struggling with how to present God in a way that is not that is all encompassing instead of a specific gender, and not so neutral as a they, or God forbid an it. I read a piece recently how God should always have the pronoun they, and the movement from Hashem to Hadem, and I think it's very poignant as we think of Lech Lecha as well, where Abram and Sarai become Abraham and Sarah. So they're having an identity change while we're thinking about our own identities and genders and pronouns and all that we're dealing with as a society.
Exactly. And I think that this parasha is this wonderful jumping off point for each and every one of us to be wrestling with that. I mean, first of all, when we study Torah, it's not just put the words in front of us, let's just read it and say, oh, okay, and walk away. We wrestle with it, right? Turn it over and over, for everything is in it. And so that whole idea of how it is that we keep turning it over, and these conversations continue, and they continue not only with each other, right? So with one another, and within our whole community, but also within ourselves. Lech Lecha, go unto yourself. And let us continue to struggle with it. Let us continue to find our identity and the people's identity. And also that understanding that each of us have that connection to God, the divine, however it is that each person creates that within themselves and finds that within themselves. And, this parasha is that wonderful jumping off point for it. So I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you both.
Me too. Thank you, Rabbi Tilchin, Rabbi Cohen. Thank you so much. It has been a great conversation. It's been wonderful talking with both of you. And I look forward to many more conversations with you and others.
Absolutely. Really very special. I want to wish everybody here and both of you a Shabbat Shalom and another week of insightful Torah that informs our lives and takes us on a journey.
Amen. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. All right, everybody. Lech Lecha.
Lech Lecha. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Bye.